I'm going to go ahead and dive in. Like I said, I'm Lori Ward. I'm CEO with Washington's National Park Fund. I continue to believe that I have the very best job in the world. It's such a privilege to work with these three national parks and these wonderful rangers. At Washington's National Park Fund, we're operated by a staff of 8 strong and smart women, all women. We have a strong and active board of directors. We work very closely with the national parks and with the park leadership. The leadership teams present to us priority projects at the start of the year, and then we set out to raise the funds throughout the year. One of our missions and one of our purposes is to bring people together for the parks. And it's been an exciting journey. Every year we're raising more, and I would say most importantly, giving more to the parks. And a lot of you who are with us today are a part of that community. So we are incredibly grateful to you. With that, I am going to dive in. I want to introduce my 3 friends. Dan Kamicha is up at North Cascades as Chief Ranger, and he's worked there since 2013. Prior to working in the North Cascades, Dan was a park ranger at Rainier, Golden Gate, Everglades, Sequoia, Kings Canyon, Yellowstone, Rocky Mountain, Grand Canyon National Parks, all of them. You know, what a collection of park units. So we're glad you're with us today, Dan. Thank you. Next up over at Olympic is Scott Jacobs. Scott, thanks for being with us today. And Scott came to the Pacific Northwest in 2020 as Chief Ranger at Olympic National Park. Scott's worked for the National Park Service and the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center, as well as, you know, many beautiful parks similar to Dan: Yosemite, Mesa Verde, Big Bend, Boston National Historical Park. And Scott, we're excited to have you in the Pacific Northwest. Thank you for being here. Stefan started his career in Olympic. He actually kind of grew up over in Olympic National Park and was active as a young whippersnapper in the Enchanted Valley with the chalet there. He and his family worked on restoration when he was young. And he's been a climbing ranger at Rainier for the last 15 years. Through the years, he's worked as a law enforcement ranger, a wildlife fire crew member, engine, helicopter boss, aviation manager, and the SAR coordinator for Mount Rainier National Park. Stefan and his lovely wife, Rebecca, who is also a good friend, are a match made in Rainier, and they've been raising their 14, almost 15-year-old daughter within the shadows, the trails, and alongside the climbing rangers at the mountain. So Stefan, thank you for being with us today. Gentlemen, all 3 of you, thank you. And we're going to dive right in. And what we're going to do today, folks, is just kind of do a panel discussion. If we stumble over each other, that's okay. But they all have seen the questions that I'm going to be posing, and lean in, gentlemen, as you see one and hear one that you especially would like to react to. I want to go around real quick, and we'll start with Scott. Approximately how many rescues do you have each year in Olympic? Are you seeing the numbers growing? Can you tell us a little bit?
Sure, absolutely. You know, in counting these up in preparation for this meeting, I think I can say on average, we've got about 60 rescues every year. Some of those being, you know, quite long rescues or several days, some of them being just a single afternoon event. That's actually down from previous years. Over the past couple, we've reached as high in the mid 80s, and that was in 2020. We also saw a spike in visitation during 2020, 2021. So, you know, really, it'd be hard to draw a correlation, but yeah, with more people coming to the park, we are having more search and rescues in the wilderness.
I'm sure you are. Thank you. Dan, next over to you at North Cascades. How many are you seeing in an average year?
We're actually pretty similar. I'd say we average somewhere from between 30 to 60 rescues a year. And then between 10 and 20 of those are what we would call a major rescue, which puts us over. It's based on cost, but really they're the more complicated rescues where we have to bring in people or bring people in on overtime to be able to manage it. And that also has been increasing steadily over the years. With COVID, the last couple of years, we definitely saw a spike. This last summer, we bumped up to over 60 rescues that we had. So it keeps us busy, and that's condensed into about, really a 4-month period.
Intense 4 months. Stefan, share with us what goes on average down at Mount Rainier, would you please?
Same thing as Olympic and North Cascades, I would say between 40 and 60 every year. Though, like Scott, that I've looked at this, I'm kind of a data junkie, and I maintain a system where we, have good SAR records, and I have trouble correlating it with any cause that is obvious. Generally, yeah, when there's a lot more visitors in the summer and we get great weather on the weekends, there'll be more people in the park, and that leads to a few more rescues than average, but not as many as you might think. We go from a 1 point some million people to 1 point some million people from year to year, and the rescues can go down. It has a lot to do with weather. It has a lot to do with the shape of the climbing routes, although a majority of our incidents are related to climbing. It's not anything that I can correlate it to, actually, but generally I would say more people, more SARS, but not as many as you might think.
Thank you. And I'm going to start with you on this one, Stefan. How are park SAR personnel trained? How are you trained for the work that you do?
It depends on the work group, I would say. First of all, some work groups have a higher priority or a greater mission in SAR, others not as much. So we train people according to their proximity to SAR. But I'd like to start off by saying that every national park employee is part of that SAR team, or has the potential to be. So even in maintenance and in interp, NCR, they all give some sort of hand oftentimes, or a certain number of people from each one of those working units. But obviously the Ranger Division, the Visitor and Resource Protection Division, has a higher proximity towards that SAR and responsibility to respond. And at Mount Rainier, we have probably around 80 people in the Ranger Division, and most of those people are active in some way in SAR. But I'd say that there's actually 20 to 30 core people at Mount Rainier that are routinely responding to our SARs. So with those people, we tend to focus most of our training, and hiring those people is the first thing that we do, of course, but then we equip them, and once we give them equipment, then we can send them out to train for incidents. And boy, I was thinking about this question this morning, and I think I like to divide it up in 3 different areas. There's the obvious skills stuff that we need to train them. That's EMT training, or technical rigging training, or helicopter training, or things like this that are obvious. But I think there's 2 areas that oftentimes people don't think of. One would be, we have risk management systems in the National Park Service, and when I first started, those were laughable. I think now they're really good programs. We have this program called Operational Leadership, and it's a really realistic way to manage risk to people, but it's necessary that they receive this training so that they can participate in those risk management processes. So that's another whole area. I think another area is incident organization and business management. It's not just for every 1 person you have in the field, you might have 2 people back in the ICP, and those people have to know what to do their jobs. And often this type of training is related to wildland fire training, but it's still training that we need to hold. It takes many days to have training in some cases to fulfill these positions. So, man, Scott and Dan, as chief rangers, they have a lot of responsibilities to ensure that, and so as does our chief ranger, to ensure that all those people are getting all that training in the appropriate amounts and with the right equipment. And so it's a real challenge, and I know that I can speak for probably all of us that it's difficult, and we have a lot of, do we take a position that costs $25,000 for a summer seasonal job? Do we maybe not fill that job and maybe use that money to pay for that $18,000 rigging for rescue course or that $3,000 litter. I mean, we're all trying to make these priorities, and that extra help that we can get, to just for that litter that we need offsets the ability for us to have the litter and then also make the position happen and whatnot. So we're operating at those little fine thresholds right now. I know all of us are. So yeah, that's how, but that's in a nutshell how we train. Yeah.
Thank you, Stefan. Scott, Dan, anything you want to add to that?
I think Stefan covered it pretty well there. I would add, it's kind of a layered approach. So we look at it as there's a very basic SAR training that we try to get everybody in who's going to be involved in SAR in the park, so that we're all operating on the same page. And then as we look at different levels or disciplines like Stefan was talking about, we add training on top of that. So in this park, we have a big swiftwater program, or we're developing a swiftwater program, which not all the parks have. So we have specialized training specific to that program and gear and everything else that goes along with it. So it's really somewhat dependent on where we're working and who's involved as to what the training is going to be.
Makes sense, Dan. Scott, anything to add there?
Well, I think both of these guys could agree. Olympic, as an example, we're often called 3 parks in 1. We have mountains, rainforests, and coastal environments. And really, I think that what that means for our program is we have to be prepared for all of them. And so much like, North Cascades and Rainier, we're training for the environments that we work in, and we're training often. At a very basic level, a lot of SAR skill is, back to the basics. So just, for an example of how we train, every year we run basic search and rescue courses, land navigation, how to stay safe, risk management, how to prepare for SAR missions, as well as how to load a patient into a litter, push that down the trail. And really, we start from there. We add incident command system, technical rope rescue, water rescue, really, you name it, depending on the environment. A lot of that we handle in-house. So we've got just a high level of expertise. And I know both of these programs at North Cascades and Rainier, much the same, right? There's specialties within each park. And so we can handle a lot of the training in-house, but we also reach out quite a bit for industry standard professional courses and either bring them to the park or send our rangers to these courses.
And we have donors that enjoy giving to the 3 parks so that you can offer additional trainings to people. It means a lot to them because they know, the situation you're in. Casey, could you pull up that image of the folks with the litter, the person, please? Just so folks know. Next slide. That is a litter. That's what the gentlemen are talking about. Thank you, Casey. I'm going to take this one to start with Scott. And this is one I really look forward to hearing from you all on. Explain how you partner with volunteers across the state. It's so key. And I've been in the room when an incident command is, I don't think I'm using the right words, but when it's starting up and the whiteboard's getting filled out and the people are coming and going. Explain some about that. And Dan, I'm going to start, well, actually, Scott, excuse me. Scott, you want to take this one first? How do you partner with volunteers, privately funded rescue groups from across the state? Thank you.
I was once told, really have the relationship before you need it. And so a lot of this is just outreach to our local partners. A lot of the counties that surround our park, we maintain just excellent relationships with. And we'll, train often together or when we can, but it's really knowing the people involved. The Olympic SAR team, I think, Dan, I heard you say it, there's a core function in terms of park rangers, like SAR is in our SAR, position description. But some of these incidents can just rapidly exceed both like scope, size, capability. And so we really rely on our local partners, volunteer search and rescue groups, to kind of bridge that gap between what we're capable of and like a larger expanding incident or a very technical skill. We work with the state quite a bit through their emergency management division. And so when we have a need, we will work through the state. They maintain all of the volunteer and local, state search and rescue agencies. and they start reaching out to provide resources. I think maybe one of the best examples I can use is during a lost person incident, search dogs. We use search dogs quite often. This park does not have a search dog program, and it's just not something that we've maintained. It's takes quite a bit of resources, training, and experience to effectively use a search dog. But there's many resources around the state that are just excellent, and we can reach out to bring them here for some of our SAR events.
Well, being a dog owner and lover, I love hearing that. Thank you. Dan, over to you. How do you
Yeah.
work with volunteers here?
Yeah, on the same page with Scott. I'd say we, generally, not always, but often for the technical rescues, we can do a pretty good job in-house with those, but with the Park Service resources that we have, which we'll probably end up getting into a little bit later, which some of those resources are shared between the 3 parks, and the helicopter that is shared as well, and the crew that's on that ship. And that's extremely helpful for those technical rescues, where it's with a known location. Where we struggle is when we get lost person incidents, someone we can't find, and we depend very heavily on the county volunteer SAR teams for that, to be able to do those searches. We had 2 last summer up here at North Cascades, and I think we pretty much used every volunteer team on the west side of the Cascades to help out during those searches. So we have resources from all over, over from Scott's territory and down in Stephens, from all the counties that will come in and help out. So we partner with them, and it's a great relationship in my mind. The other part that comes out of that is it gives us the ability to use other resources that we may not have, like Scott was saying with the dogs. We've also utilized UAS or drones for searching areas, which we don't have in the park, which several of the search teams do have, and other technologies that some of the counties have that we don't have, we can utilize through those volunteers. So.
That's great. That's great. It's good to hear. Stefan, anything you'd like to add?
Ditto, and I can't add a thing. Those were great answers.
I remember hearing a story from King County SAR, I'm not sure, but the Olympic Peninsula, how a team was woken up at 2 a.m. They came over to Rainier. A woman had broken her leg in the middle. She was up on the mountain, middle of the night. They went in, they rescued, they came back out, headed home. And Stefan, that all was taking place when we were raising the funds and renovating the SAR cabin in Longmire area. And anything to say about that cabin?
Yeah, well, that has been a big deal in the park, and it's we rely, just as North Cascades and Olympic do, on volunteers, specifically the Mountain Rescue Association groups, Seattle Mountain Rescue, Tacoma Mountain Rescue, Olympic Mountain Rescue. Big ups to those guys. There's, I think, 11 different groups in our area that we use, and they're all part of that greater Mountain Rescue Association. We also use the military. I think we all use the military, either a naval air station would be, or joint base record. And those relationships are important, and we appreciate. We started doing this years ago. I started with a program where I wanted to get these people up here from those mountain rescue units, so they'd be proximal to the incident when the incident actually occurred. And so we had what was called a patrol program, and then through working with Mountain Rescue and we identified an opportunity to maybe have a place for them to stay, which is a way of showing our appreciation to those volunteer rescue groups, that we would dedicate some housing so that they could come up here and stay, and they'd be here actually when the rescue occurred. So it was a win-win for us and a win for them, to be able to come and bring their families up and stay in a cabin up here in Longmire, which was really cool. So that was funded from Washington National Park Fund money, and it's really been a benefit to those local volunteer groups as well as to the park. So thank you for that.
I know some of them are with us here today. I recognize some of the names.
I see hi people out there that I know. I know a couple of you folks that are
For
have
sure.
taken advantage of that. Thank you.
As we are going through this, we have a lot of questions, and the gentlemen, I'll have these questions in advance, but if you have some, feel free to enter them in the Q&A box. If we have time at the end, we will get to them. Dan, I like how you referred to it as the ship when you talked about a helicopter, the ship. And I want to ask you this one. I know you, all of you, I mean, you contract with air service helicopters from various areas. Which of you would like to share a bit about what that means to you today and how you tap into them, how you access them? Dan, can you start with that?
Yeah, I can start with that. We do, like you said, we have a number of different options there. You know, one being, and maybe Stefan will jump in on this in a little bit, but with this exclusive use helicopter, which is a helicopter we use for the summer season, that's brought in. It started down, well, I guess since the beginning, it's been cooperation between the parks up here to have a helicopter that can do short haul operations. So it has the ability to be able to bring a rescuer in on a rope underneath the helicopter into the technical terrain, which is something that's, you know, extremely beneficial for all three of these parks because of our terrain, that the rugged terrain that we have. So we rely pretty heavily during the summer on that ship, but it's not, you know, it doesn't cover everything that we need. That's one component of it. We also work closely with our local helicopter vendors. I think all three parks still do this, and we'll utilize those helicopters and those pilots for everything from moving personnel to doing, you know, flying into technical terrain. So, you know, we utilize that pretty heavily. We also utilize, as Stefan says, the military. So we'll utilize those helicopters at both the bases up here. Whidbey Island has a great rescue program here, and they fly quite a bit up in the mountains, and they've been we've had a very successful relationship with them over the last several years, utilizing their helicopter. So there's a number of different options for us, and really, and that's not even talking about the counties. There's counties that we've utilized as well, and some of them have other technologies on their ship that, like, forward-looking infrared that we can use if we're looking in, trying to look for a heat signature or something in a search. So there's just a number of different options out here, and really, for us to make our programs work, we need to be able to utilize all of them, and we do utilize all of them.
Well, thankfully, there are so many resources for you. I love hearing that. Scott, anything you want to add?
No, I think Dan pretty much covered, you know, our efforts are, you know, our strategies are very, very similar. I will mention that the Coast Guard, we benefit from the Coast Guard as well. I know that the military has been, they are a very valuable partner as well, and tend to respond at times.
That makes sense for you. Stefan, anything to add?
Just something for folks that are listening and might be interested to know that back in the days, not too long ago, we used to, when we needed a helicopter resource, we would have to call it up. It was called the call when needed contract. And so if we had a rescue, we'd have to get on the phone and call Olympia and call Tacoma and call Marble Mount and call these different vendors from all over the area. And they'd say, no, don't have anything available. Call the next guy. And so, you know, sometimes hours would roll by. And so we'd have to field ground teams headed up and just to hedge our bets. And that worked. And we went that way for decades. You know, that's just how rescue was. But with the advent of our exclusive use helicopter, what we have been able to do is we have a crew on the ground with the helicopter right there now. So when the rescue occurs, we can, we can actually just, that's what they're there for, all three parks, and we'll call them up and say, we got a mission for you, and they're configured right then and there. So it's really shortened our response times and our professionalism, most notably, because the helicopter was on call, but also the people that needed to staff the helicopter, the managers and the crew members, we'd have to go, hey, is there any crew members available in the park, and maybe we find somebody that wasn't very experienced, or maybe we found a manager that hadn't managed a helicopter in 2 or 3 years, and well, so now they're in charge of the helicopter. So now we have people that not only we have a helicopter and a pilot familiar with the terrain that's on call, that's just sitting there, we also have a whole crew of NPS people who are professionally trained, ready to respond, highly qualified, and ready to go. And that has been probably the biggest game changer in rescue that I've felt in the last 30 years of doing rescue here in the Pacific Northwest.
That's great. I want to ask you, and I'm going to direct this to you, Stefan. I know the climbing companies, the guides and the climbing companies can jump in and help you out from time to time. Can you address that? You rely on them as well.
Thank you for reminding me of that. And they do often, and we use them a lot. And they are happy and proud and very helpful to provide whatever assistance they can up in the mountain. Oftentimes, the rangers are at Camp Muir and might climb once or twice a week. The guides, different guides usually are climbing every day. And so there's a great chance that they're going to be actually proximal to the SAR when it actually happens. And so they'll provide that, at least the notification, if not the initial response. And then we come in after and help them take it over, and then usually finish it up. And yeah, they're a big help.
Yeah, I know they are. That's really great. This question has intrigue to it. Are there areas within the park when your team gets a call, you instantly know it's going to be difficult and risky as you head out on that mission? Can you share a little bit about what comes to mind right off the bat for you as being especially risky? Scott, can you start that one, please?
Sure, absolutely. When thinking about this, the coastline. So Olympic has a very rugged coastline. And, we normally tell folks, if you're a healthy, experienced hiker, plan for 2/3 of the mile that you're going to be able to cover, because there are areas where you're not going to be able to pass at high tide. There are areas where you just can't pass. You have to go overland. It's rocky, it's rugged, you're hiking on sand. And so when a call comes in from our coastline, it typically involves either someone getting cliffed out, or inundated by the tide, or a fall from one of the coastal cliffs. And our ability to get there is, we do a lot of risk assessment. I mean, that's where SAR really starts, is assessing the risk, and sending rescuers into a coastline at high tide. It's not something that we can do very safely. The weather on the peninsula also challenges some of our aviation assets. So whenever a coastal rescue comes up, it's going to be a little bit more complex. There are added risk elements just dealing with the ocean, which is something that we contend with.
Oh, thank you. Dan, what comes to mind for you first when you hear that question? What's most
I kind of
risky?
laugh because I think that's our entire park, that it's just such a rugged park up here that pretty much anywhere is a challenge. We do very few litter carryouts, which we talked about earlier. Very few of those in this park because it's we just don't have great trails, or maybe the trails are great, but they're not easy to get a litter down. It's just very remote and rugged terrain. And one thing that we've been seeing more of, so as visitation's changed a bit in the park and the use has changed a bit in the park, and we're starting to see people go further into the backcountry not as prepared, so doing these like light and fast trips. So they'll do, with a day's trip might be close to a 30-mile trip now, and that's a challenge for us because it opens up a big area. One, often these people are solo. That's becoming more common. And two, if they don't show back up, it just opens up a huge area to look, and in very rugged terrain. And it's very hard to find people, from the air or ground when you have a big area to cover. There's just a lot of terrain and a lot of, steep terrain down in the trees, cliffs, snow and ice. So just doing a search can be extremely difficult there. So you know, going back to what you first asked, I really, it's our entire park, but maybe the southern pickets area might be the ones like, oh, this is going to be a challenge for us.
Thank you, Dan. Stefan, what comes to mind for you as most risky when you hear?
Everybody expects me to say, like, the rescue on the summit is, you know, the hardest place to get somebody. It's like, we have a helicopter, we just go up there and get them. It might take, you know, an hour and it's done. I think the most challenging SARs at Mount Rainier National Park are oftentimes, I think our rivers are actually more dangerous than the mountain is. We've lost a tremendous number of people on the Wonderland Trail just trying to cross the river during high water in the summertime when the bridge is maybe getting, you know, bitten by the creek and maybe the river's washed out and they try to pick a place to cross up or downstream of where the bridge would be. And then they underestimate the strength of the water and get swept away. And we've lost a ton of people doing that. And sometimes we don't find them or we have a difficult time trying to find them. So anyway, I think those stand out to me. If I know someone else's, if there's a report that someone's slipped off a bridge, I'm just like, oh, this is going to be hard, you know.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that, because I think it's important for all of us to hear that and to be reminded of that very thing. Yeah, thank you. We have about 5 more minutes. I want to ask you about here, you know, this is going to be kind of self-serving, but I think it's important for people here, because a lot of them are donors. It's important for them to hear from you the impact that all of our, because I'm a donor myself, but what impact funds given to Washington's National Park Fund have on your park. Stefan, you talked a little bit about the SARP or the cabin. And I want to go to you, Dan, and ask about technical rescue training for the Rangers. Some of you have mentioned Swiftwater and Alpine. Can you tell us a little bit about the training? And you have talked about it a little bit, but anything else you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, no, definitely. It's, you know, and I mentioned early on that one of the areas we've been working on is Swiftwater. This park has a lot of water and a lot of rivers in it. And we have, you know, from the back country right into the front country, we have the Skagit River, which is a fairly tame river, although there's a lot of water that comes down and there are rapids, and it's controlled by several reservoirs above it. So there's great water flow year round on that river. So the Skagit actually becomes a very popular whitewater rafting river later in the summer when a lot of the other rivers have dried up or mostly dried up. So with that, we've been trying to develop our Swiftwater rescue program, and we've definitely taken advantage of donations that have come in. And we've really been able to, one, start with the Swiftwater rescue training, but then also build a whole cache out of that. And then, you know, kind of related to that, revamp, upgrade, kind of modernize our facilities for just SAR operations. So yeah, it's been a tremendous help for us.
That's great. I appreciate hearing that. Scott, avalanche awareness training up on Hurricane Ridge. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, absolutely. If you don't mind bringing that photo up, I've got two rescuers practicing avalanche training. You know, having a road that will get you to the top of Hurricane Ridge, lots of, well, between the 3 parks, lots of avalanche terrain. But specifically at Hurricane Ridge, you know, we really wanted to bring different levels of avalanche awareness, avalanche rescue training. And, you know, these 2 rescuers, I love this photo because, you know, the one in the back is, you know, not a ranger, he's a scientist, right? Serves on he's probably one of our most highly skilled, you know, SAR responders. And, you know, just one of our go-tos. They're out here having fun during a level 1 rescue course. We also put on general avalanche awareness, and, you know, we sought that from a company through your grant. And we were able to bring professional level facilitation for, you know, these 2 courses. I think last year in 2022, we reached about 35 people, and we've got plans to do the same in the future. So it's been just a huge benefit for us.
That's great. Stefan, anything else that stands out for you? Do you want to mention any topic in particular? And I think I might know where you might be heading.
Well, maybe I do. I had some ideas this morning about for folks. You know, we'll get a lump sum, and I think we use it to the best purposes we possibly can, but SAR is a recurring need every year. And I think I've always had this idea with the climbing rangers that I don't need like one shot donation to crampons. I need like a subscription for crampons, like 2 to come every month, because that's the pace at which we use our crampon. I think the SAR programs in the park could use some sort of benefactor, some sort of funding challenge from somebody where it's recurring. Like I would throw a funding challenge out there for somebody like, how about like a carbon fiber litter costs about $3,500. And I tell you what, I would be in far better shape right now with my back the way it is. I can't carry litters anymore because my back's so messed up. And so if these younger rangers have lighter loads to carry with lighter wheels and systems than I used to carry, I think it's a good deal. So these carbon fiber litters cost about $3,500. One is great, thank you. We'll definitely use it, but we have at an Olympic, you know, for instance, they have 9 sub-districts throughout the park where they need 9 of those, and you know, it's you use one and it gets taken out of service for. It's nice to have 2, so that I mean they could use 18 of them, and Dan could use probably that is just as many, and we have those ranger stations all over the park that we need to put that gear into too. So I think like a litter subscription every year where would be really cool. Or, you know, I was thinking about this also, the level up from there is like, I would love it if Scott and Dan and our park here could collaborate on a rigging training, like a technical rope rescue training every year. And those cost like $15,000. I do one every year for the climbing rangers, but the rest of the rangers in the park struggle to get that sort of training. And it would be, I think, really sort of cool and beneficial if Olympic North Cascades and Mount Rainier could hold a joint training every year. And to know that every year, like who are we going to send in 2024? Who are we going to send in 2025? To know that it's not just a one-off thing, but a yearly occurrence would be just such a beautiful, beautiful thing. And it's not, I think, really inside our capabilities right now to do that. And boy, that would make a difference. That would make a huge difference. So
I know the 2 women that I work with, we're called the fundraising, the frontline fundraisers. I know they're listening today and they're both like crawling out of their seats because we literally talked about this very possibility this morning, what you just described. So that's, yeah, a subscription. I think that's good. Anything else any one of you want to call out on the difference Washington's National Park Fund and our donors here today have had on your park? Anything else you'd like to add?
I think the one other thing that's been great for us is when there's been donors that have been associated with one of our rescues. So we rescue someone and they take an interest and they have this ability to be able to give some money to go back and support the program. And that's been a very positive thing for us. And us in our park, what we'll try to do is utilize that money in a way that speaks to whatever that incident was or that rescue was, kind of in a similar fashion. So just calling that out, that's been a very positive thing for our park.
A lot of people reach out to us. I know you all send them to us, but they reach out and they want to do that very thing. And when those gifts come in, just so you know, we ask the donors, you know, is this unrestricted or do you want to direct it to a park? And if they say, I want to direct it to Olympic, it goes to Olympic. Just, you know, I just want folks to know that we're very thorough with all of that. Stefan, Scott, anything to add? I have a few more questions.
I think both Dan and Stefan articulated it very well. It's just been a very incredibly positive thing for us at Olympic.
Great, great. Time permitting, how visitors? Here's one more, and then I'm going to go to Casey with the Q&A box. How can visitors to the park best prepare for a day in the high country? Any online resources you want to mention? Dan, I'm going to turn this to you because you were talking about the people that go in and solo and they go in and, you know,
Yeah, I can start it off for sure. And I think I was thinking about this when I saw that question. And one thing I'd love to see is people actually going to our website and doing the research there and seeing what the conditions are or finding out where they're going. I think there's a lot of great resources just on the government website to start with. And then obviously on top of that, there's just all the climbing blogs and backcountry blogs that have great information for folks. And really a lot of it's very timely. You know, you can get information just from the last few days of what conditions are like in any area. But yeah, really just spending that time to do a little research ahead of time, understanding, you know, one of the challenges for us is understanding our permit system here. All three parks do things a little bit different, which is hard for visitors, and we understand that, and we're trying to be similar in areas we can. We also have different needs in all three of the parks, which necessitates us doing things a little bit differently, but trying to understand, you know, what those requirements are. That's very helpful as well.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to go to a question from the Q&A box. Here we go. Do you have agreements with the military for helicopter use in the parks? And do they ask to train in the wilderness? Stefan.
Yeah, we definitely do. All three parks do. And we have agreements with them to conduct training. I think 3 units were called out specifically. We use the 2nd 135th unit at JBLM. I know that they use Naval Air Station Woodby, both at Olympic and North Cascades. They use the Coast Guard. So we have to have written memorandums of understanding or general agreements in place with them before we can actually do operations with them. So yeah, we definitely do, and we rely on them. And as Dan said, it's not just accessory, it's a core part of our response. They fill a niche that no one else can fill in many cases.
Thank you. I want to give a special shout out to Sula, who's with us today, and she extends her thanks to all of you and the volunteer SAR teams. The work that you do is so important. So that's Sula Jacobs at Olympic National Park. Final question. We're right on the closing hour. How do you work with SAR requests from Garmin and InReach? Can you do that in 1 minute? Who wants to take it?
I can be real quick on that. You know, I think with Garmin, InReach, and other messaging devices, it's completely changed in some ways, how we do search and rescue, and that we have the real-time information that comes in when it's utilized correctly and responsibly. You know, there's a challenge out there that not everyone has the same idea what an emergency is. And so we're wrestling with that every year when we get these calls in. It's like, well, is that really an emergency? It's, you know, does it really necessitate bringing the helicopter up from Mount Rainier right now and flying for it? So that part's a definite challenge. But, you know, just the information flow is incredible that we didn't have 10 or 15 years ago on incidents.
Kind of a blessing and a curse, isn't it, at times?
For sure.
Yeah. A special friend of the funds and a friend of both Stefan and myself, Don Gaines says, I have not met Scott or Dan yet, but I'd like to say hi to Stefan and have him pass along his best to Rebecca. So there's from Don. So we're wrapping up, folks. And so far this past year, we have awarded 1.1 million and have an additional 400,000 in holding for the parks when they're ready to take them for this summer projects. Every year we raise more and give more. It's such a privilege. And, you know, thanks to all of you who are with us today. Our next virtual field trip is March 29th, and it will be the topic will be, can you go to that next slide, Casey, if you got that in there? Maybe not. The topic is going to be, it's okay, cougars in the backcountry. And Kim Sabin, I think, from Olympic is going to be meeting with us, and she has some amazing footage of cougars on the peninsula, the Olympic Peninsula, as well as how they run into the interstate or the highways and they have to turn around and go back, and when they do cross. So if you're interested in cougars, and I am one of them, join us on Wednesday, March 29th at 12 noon. Gentlemen, thank you. You know, thank you. can't thank you enough, not only for being here, but most importantly for the work that you do and the commitment that you have. And I know it's not all glamorous, but boy, we all are so incredibly grateful that you take this on and help keep visitors safe. So thank you. Yeah, right back at you. All right. Be in touch, everyone. If you have any other questions, you want to reach out to us, let us know at wnpf.org. Have a great day.